The Knights of Columbus urging people to call their local congressman to fight for the unborn. I'm Tim Huffman, and that story is coming up.
Pope Francis said this morning that there are many different religions in the world because that's what God wants. The warlike conditions inside a Venezuelan pediatric hospital as the country's chaos grows worse.
A special look at a new play that includes the story of a German bishop who helped shut down Nazi death clinics that targeted disabled children. I'm Emily Drewby, and that story is ahead.
Good evening, I'm Ed Wilkinson. Liz Faublas is off. Catholic leaders and elected officials are joining forces to protect infant survivors of abortion. The action is getting strong support from Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio. Currents News' Tim Huffman reports the latest.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Elected officials and Catholic leaders are pushing for a congressional vote on the Born Alive Act. It would provide any child who survives an abortion the same medical care given to other newborns. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is offering strong backing for the measure, saying, quote, "I join in supporting the members of Congress who, despite opposition from the Democratic leadership, have committed themselves to bring the Born Alive Act to a vote. It is grossly inconceivable that there are elected officials inhibiting the right of infants who survive an abortion. There are many people mobilized in the name of the unborn, and I encourage the Brooklyn and Queens faithful to contact their congressional representative on this critical issue. In the name of the life of all babies who survive an abortion, I pray that this bill will be brought for a vote and adopted." Congress needs 218 House members to sign a petition and force a vote. Congressman Steve Scalise is the Republican House whip.
How is it legal in America to kill a baby after it's been born alive outside the womb? It's shocking.
Missouri Congresswoman Ann Wagner introduced the Born Alive legislation.
We stand on your shoulders in protecting the most vulnerable in our society. I came to Congress to be a voice for the voiceless.
Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming urged Democrats to reach across the aisle.
If you are for the people, that has to start with being for the most vulnerable among us, for the babies. You cannot be for the people if you will not protect our babies.
U.S. bishops give several reasons why protection is necessary. The first being babies are born alive during abortions. The bishops cite evidence that babies born alive are killed or neglected. Church leaders argue current laws are insufficient. Finally, they point to New York's abortion law, which removed existing protections for babies born alive. The Knights of Columbus, at the forefront of the pro-life movement, is fully behind the bill.
Ken Latham, State Deputy.
Kenneth Latham is one of the leaders of New York's nearly 86,000 Knights. He said failing to care for an abortion survivor is brutal.
It really is incomprehensible how a baby could be born through whether it be a botched abortion or whatever, and they can just leave it on the table. It's just like, it's mind-boggling that someone would even consider that humane. National Supreme Knight Carl Anderson is calling on America's 1 million Knights to act. They must write their congressman. They must reach out to them, call them, flood them, flood their phone banks, make their phones ring off the hook.
Tim Huffman, Currents News.
New actions are being taken in the states to protect the sanctity of life. South Carolina lawmakers will vote on an anti-abortion bill that has advanced to the state's House floor. The legislation would outlaw abortions once a heartbeat can be detected in an unborn child. If it becomes law, the measure would ban nearly all of the deadly procedures in South Carolina. The Indiana Senate has now approved legislation that expands conscience protections for nurses, physician assistants, and pharmacists opposed to abortion. The bill allows these additional categories of medical professionals to avoid having any role in an abortion on religious grounds. The measure heads to Governor Eric Holcomb, who's expected to sign it into law. Pope Francis took on provocative topics about Muslims and other religions this morning during an audience with pilgrims, his first since his mission to Morocco last weekend. The Holy Father said having many religions in the world is the will of God, and he explained why he visits Muslims and not just Catholics.
Ma qualcuno può domandarsi, ma perché il Papa va dai musulmani e non solamente dai cattolici? Ma quello che Dio vuole è la fratellanza fra noi e in modo speciale per questo viaggio con i nostri fratelli, figli di Abramo, come noi, i musulmani.
Francis recalled that Catholics are not the only believers in the world and that the variety of faiths should not divide us.
Ma perché Dio permette che ci siano tante religioni? Ma Dio ha voluto permettere questo. I teologi della scolastica dicevano la voluntas permissiva di Dio. Ha voluto permettere questa realtà. Ci sono tante religioni che alcuni nascono dalla cultura, ma sempre guardano il cielo, guardano Dio. Non dobbiamo spaventarci della differenza. Dio ha permesso questo, ma sì dobbiamo spaventarci se noi non facciamo lavori di fratellanza, di andare insieme sulla vita.
The Holy Father said that during his time in Morocco, he wanted to talk about the issue of migration, since Morocco is the last stage for many migrants who are trying to reach Europe. This is why he asked that the dignity of migrants not be damaged, because being a migrant is not an adjective. Migrants are people.
A me non piace dire migranti, a me piace più dire persone migranti. Sapete perché? Perché migrante è un aggettivo, in cambio persone sono sostantive. Noi siamo caduti nella cultura dell'aggettivo, usiamo tanti aggettivi e dimentichiamo tante volte i sostantivi, cioè la sostanza. L'aggettivo va attaccato a un sostantivo, a una persona.
Morocco was also the setting for the signing of a major UN global pact on migration. The Pope's next international trip will be to Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia next month. A major joint effort today by the Vatican and the United States in the battle to protect religious freedom. U.S. Ambassador Callista Gingrich and Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin organized today's meeting, which Gingrich said comes at an urgent time.
Unfortunately, for millions around the world, religious freedom is currently under threat or restricted entirely. All of us across governments, civil society, faith organizations, and media must work together to advance and defend this cause.
Cardinal Parolin warned the world is witnessing an all-out assault on religious freedom. Irish Catholics are concerned tonight that the government plans to turn many Catholic schools into public ones. The latest proposal by the Department of Education would make 1 out of 8 schools in an area northeast of Dublin not Catholic. The Church in Ireland currently runs 90% of the country's schools. 2 of the most recognizable faces in the college admissions scandal, actresses Lachlan and Felicity Huffman, went before a judge in Boston today. Each said they understood the mail fraud charges they're facing and left the courtroom after waiving their pretrial hearings. Kristen Holmes reports from the courthouse.
It's lights, camera, plea in a Boston courtroom today as actresses Lachlan and Felicity Huffman face a judge in the largest college admissions scandal in history. Lachlan and her husband accused of paying $500,000 in bribes to get their 2 daughters into the University of Southern California, while Huffman is charged with disguising $15,000 as a charitable donation that went to altering her daughter's SAT scores. Last month, prosecutors arresting 50 people in the scheme dubbed Operation Varsity Blues, orchestrated by William Rick Singer, the CEO of a college prep company. The scheme allegedly worked in one of 2 ways, through cheating on standardized testing or through athletics, bribing coaches to falsely classify the applicant as a recruited athlete.
Between roughly 2011 and 2018, wealthy parents paid Singer about $25 million in total to guarantee their children's admission to elite schools.
Singer is cooperating with authorities.
Students were kept out of school because of what you did. What's your reaction to parents?
Meanwhile, many universities have fired those coaches involved. Others say they are reviewing the admitted students connected to the scandal.
And we have now learned from a law enforcement source that the prosecution is seeking jail time for all of the defendants. That includes Felicity Huffman and Lori Lachlan, that they may face anywhere between 6 to 21 months in jail. Reporting from Boston, I'm Kristen Holmes. Back to you.
Democrats in the U.S. House want to see Robert Mueller's full Russia report, and today the Judiciary Committee took a big step to get it. In a party line vote, they authorized subpoenas. New Yorker Jerry Nadler is the committee chairman.
Obviously, some material will have to be redacted before it's released to the public to protect privacy, to protect the various rights, but the committee is entitled and must see all the material.
Attorney General William Barr has told Congress he'll release the report later this month after he and Robert Mueller complete a review of the material. President Trump is now backing down on his plans to close the U.S.-Mexico border. The commander-in-chief said Mexico is cooperating in apprehending migrants.
And I really wanted to close it. But now Mexico is saying, no, 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 first time in decades. We will not let anybody get through.
President Trump also said that Mexico apprehended over 1,000 people at its southern border on Tuesday. A surge of migrant families at the border has led the Trump administration to dramatically expand the practice they call catch and release. This means when an immigrant holding center is overwhelmed, people are bussed hundreds of miles into the U.S. and released. Since last December, more than 125,000 people have been let go. Dramatic new video surfacing from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. These images are from December, but have just been released by the government. It shows adults and children at the border in Yuma, Arizona, wading through a hole in a fence that passes through a water-filled canal. Mexican authorities were able to stop the smuggling attempt. There's a lot more news headed your way. A special preview of a play about a heroic bishop who took on the Nazis and saved children. The chaos in Venezuela and what happened at a pediatric hospital where warlike conditions exist. The latest information about Archbishop Wilton Gregory, who could become America's first African-American cardinal. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@thesalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A new archbishop for Washington, D.C. could be announced tomorrow. Atlanta Archbishop Wilton Gregory is reported to be the man Pope Francis has selected to fill the post vacated after Cardinal Donald Wuerl's resignation last October. Catholic blogger Rocco Pomo is writing that he has confirmed the Gregory appointment. If it takes place, Archbishop Gregory could become the first African-American cardinal in the United States, since traditionally the Washington Archdiocese has been led by a cardinal. The anticipation is high for a new play about courage and the sanctity of life. The production tells the heroic story of a German bishop who saved thousands of disabled children targeted for extermination by the Nazis during World War II. Currents News' Emily Druby has an exclusive preview.
Do you have any idea who I am, Doctor?
Courageous. That's how Tony Award winner John Glover describes Bishop Clemens von Galen, the character he portrays in the play All Our Children.
He's just a guy who's got his beliefs, and he stands up for them.
After a popular run in London's West End, the play is coming to New York City and the Sheen Center.
Your Reverence, may I ask you a question?
You must.
I hope you'll forgive the bluntness, but do you love your country?
It's about a German doctor being forced by Nazis to euthanize people with disabilities, including children. As playwright Stephen Unwin explains, the atrocities were being done for financial reasons.
It was about money. It was about that these people were very expensive to keep alive. And so they were attributing economic value to human beings. And that seems to me a terrible, terrible error.
There wasn't a lot of public opposition to the horrific program, but one voice spoke out loudly against it, that of the Bishop of Munster, Clemens von Galen. The play shows how he helped stop the madness.
The right to inviolability, to life, and to freedom is an indispensable part of any moral social order.
he stood up and opposed the murder of the disabled people. Amazingly, astonishingly, he said the right thing at the right time. And Hitler stopped the program.
The play, deeply personal for Unwin. His mother was born Jewish in Nazi Germany. He was brought up Catholic, and he has a disabled son. The play's director explains he thinks the piece will make people think.
It's a play that you will want to talk about after you see it. And in that way, I find it really rewarding. It doesn't answer the questions, it raises the questions.
The American premiere of All Our Children is being presented by the Sheen Center. In Manhattan, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
Previews for All Our Children start this weekend on April 6th. The official premiere is on the 14th. If you would like to see the play, visit the website sheencenter.org and click on Tickets and Info for All Our Children. As violence continues to surge in Nicaragua, one bishop is making a plea for peace. Following anti-government protests that have led to hundreds of deaths, Auxiliary Bishop Silvio Jose Baez of Managua asks his parishioners to not take justice into their own hands, saying we would be entering into a spiral of violence in which we would all perish. The same people who supported the government of Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro are now calling for him to step down. Demonstrators gathered in Caracas Wednesday to protest as thousands continue to struggle for basic supplies.
No have electricity, no have security, no have so many things on the hospital. We are broke down. The Venezuela right now is broke down.
A draft UN report claims that over 90% of Venezuelans now live in poverty, and more than 3 million have fled the country. Self-declared President Juan Guaido says the country will keep moving forward. Doctors inside of Venezuela's pediatric hospitals say they're enduring war-like conditions as they struggle to treat patients after a series of nationwide blackouts. The lack of basic medical supplies and even water is leaving many feeling desperate and abandoned. Paula Newton has that report.
This is an emergency pediatric ward in Venezuela. Overcrowded, unbearably hot, run down, rudimentary treatment everywhere you look. Natalia Rojas has not named her baby girl, born in early March during the first countrywide blackout. She's restless, feverish, doctors suspect meningitis, but there's no way to find out. She needs several tests, Natalia tells me, and a scan of her little head, as she puts it. But it can't be done here. Scans, x-rays, the blood lab haven't been operational for months. There are shortages of every medicine and medical supply, not even the special formula that malnourished Eniber is so desperately in need of. As we walk through abandoned wards with decrepit equipment, there is no sanitation, no water, little power.
These conditions, you have to understand, are normal in Venezuela. We have seen them again and again in hospital after hospital.
And now this. Brush fires just outside the hospital. With no water, they are left to exhaust themselves, smoke and ash coming in through the windows. When we have an emergency, she tells me, we have no way of resolving the situation in most cases. We have to improvise. It's like we're combat doctors. And doctors here tell us they're at war in more ways than one. This pediatrician says she does not want to be identified for fear of reprisals. It's been 3 years since Dr. Ronnie Villasmil risked his career to give me a rare look inside a crumbling Venezuelan hospital. Since, he has not only been fired for speaking out, but just a few weeks ago he tweeted that authorities had come to arrest him after he met with a visiting UN mission to raise the alarm about hospital conditions. He is still in hiding.
It's definitely become worse.
Dr. Alejandro Crespo is a friend of Dr. Ronnie's, and he says there can be no debate. Venezuela's health system has collapsed.
You can ask the mothers, and they're not gonna lie to you. They have their kids dying in a hospital bed because of lack of medicine, and they can do nothing.
Medical staff tell us they feel as if they're sent into battle every day, knowing they will lose, leaving weary patients to plead for their children's care. As Venezuela's political conflict rages, this remains its front line.
Doctors and other medical staff at the hospital say they are threatened with dismissal and sometimes even physically abused if they speak out. Outrage tonight after a terminally ill child caught the measles while at a hospital in California. 7-year-old Jackson Souza looks like a regular kid, but he has about 100 small terminal tumors in his brain. About a month ago, Jackson went to the hospital and he stayed in a room that had been exposed to measles. The hospital claims the disease came from a child who was unvaccinated and had caught it while overseas. It took the hospital days to diagnose. Jackson has to be quarantined for 18 days. Chicago has a new mayor. Lori Lightfoot has become the city's first gay African-American woman to hold the office. The 56-year-old says she hopes to eliminate corruption in City Hall and help Chicago's low-income and immigrant communities.
We've got to do everything we can to speak to and protect our immigrant communities. I spoke at length about that last night, but I also want to make sure that as the City of Chicago gets its fair share of federal tax dollars. So we're going to stand strong and speak our values, and we're going to keep pushing back against hate.
Lightfoot defeated Democrat Tony Brechtwinkle to win the election. We invite you to tune in tomorrow for a Currents News special report. It's about the fight for justice after a young Brooklyn woman was run over and killed while doing Christmas shopping, and her family says it was no accident.
We had a closed coffin. She bled out on the street. It was just devastating. When you bring a life into this world, you don't expect it to leave before you.
And more than 2 years after her daughter's death, the case against the suspect is still tied up in the courts. Stay tuned for a special report, Accident or Homicide, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. right here on Currents News. And still ahead on this newscast, a story of one woman's courage shown on a runway during Fashion Week. And it's all adding up for some students at the Catholic schools of Brooklyn and Queens. We'll be right back. Catholic students were put to the test yesterday, and it's all adding up.
6 times 6 equals 36.
The Diocese of Brooklyn's Regional Math Bee featured contestants from 3rd through the 5th grade. The 3 regional competitions held yesterday were at 3 different schools, 1 in Brooklyn and 2 in Queens. We caught up with one of the winners after the bee to see how he felt he did.
It was not that hard, but you have to know your times tables, and one of the hardest parts is knowing your question.
Zachary and the other winners of this competition will move on to the Diocesan Math Bee Finals on April 30th at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Catholic Academy in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. It was a historic moment on the runway during Denver's Fashion Week, all because of one model. Kate Nelson is the first ever model to take the runway while in a wheelchair, a day she says only existed in her dreams. She took the modeling gig to change the perspective of people in chairs and to make her family proud.
This is such a big leap from accounting, my normal career. I don't have my mom and dad and my brother anymore, but they're my family, so that meant the world.
Kate lost her dad and brother when she was just 2, and her mom recently passed away from cancer. She decided to take the runway in Colorado to show her courage. Well, that is Currents News. I'm Ed Wilkinson. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.